Enter real-time security and operational monitoring for blockchain activity. Forta is the first real-time detection network for security and operational monitoring of blockchain activity. Forta detects threats and anomalies on DeFi, NFTs, governance, bridges, and other Web3 systems in real time. Forta comprises a decentralized network of independent node operators that scan all transactions and block-by-block state changes for outlier transactions and threats. When an issue is detected, node operators send alerts to subscribers of potential risks, which enables them to take action. With Forta, developers can build detection bots and machine learning models and run them on the decentralized Forta network to uncover anomalous activity on every blockchain transaction. Billions of dollars in Web3 are being monitored by Forta. Forta's mission is to monitor all transactions and protect all assets in Web3. Learn more about Forta at forta.org and subscribe to receive Forta alerts.
Yeah, so I'm going to walk everyone through how to use the Forta Bot SDK. And it's really easy. So I'm just going to clear out everything that I have here. So we're starting fresh. All right, so I'm on my desktop and I want to start building a Forta bot. So we have an NPM command line tool that you can easily use to get started with the Forta bot project. So the command you should use is npx Forta agent, and we want to make sure you're using the latest version. And we want to init a new project. And by default, this will initialize a JavaScript bot, but you also have the option to specify TypeScript or also Python this way. But before I do this, I'm going to create a folder for my bot so that I'm not just dumping all the files on my desktop. So call it new agent. I'm going to switch into it, and I'm going to run Forta agent init. All right, so this is telling me it's initializing a TypeScript Forta bot project. It's found a configuration file that you can use to do things like point to different networks while you're developing locally. And it's also assigning a randomly generated bot ID for me. So I can use this and know what identification my bot will have. And it's also going to save it inside a local config file. And it's also telling me that it found an existing key file. So if you don't already have one, it'll generate one for you and ask you for a password. But this key file is essentially what you'll be using to deploy your bot to the network. So, okay, and it also installed all of my NPM dependencies for me. So now we're all set up. So it populated a bunch of files inside of this new agent folder. So we'll start with package.json. This is just an NPM project. And we can see that it has a bunch of convenient scripts, and I'll go over some of them in a second. And here is the Forta config, the local Forta config file that was generated for me with the agent ID. And just one thing to point out, there is a local Forta config, but you can also have a global Forta config file that applies to all of your projects if you like, and you can override properties with your local config. And also we provide a Docker file for you to be able to containerize your bot and push it to the network easily. So most projects won't need to change anything in here, but if you would like, you can. One interesting line in here is enabling logging for your bot. So if you want to view logs for your bot on Forta Explorer, then just make sure to uncomment this out. But okay, let's get to the actual source code. So we open up the source folder. And there's just a jest unit test and a file called agent.ts. And like Stephen mentioned in his diagram, there is a handle transaction function declared here, as well as a handle block that's commented out. But essentially, this is how you will be receiving data from the scan node. So you may want to use one or the other depending on your use case. So for example, if you just wanted to check that the balance for a given account doesn't drop below a certain amount, you probably want to use something like handle block. So you're just checking that account balance once per block. But if you want something that examines each transaction, maybe goes through transaction logs, you probably want to use something like handle transaction. The Node.js SDK also uses Ethers.js internally for some functionality like parsing logs. And we expose that through our package as well. So if you wanted to use Ethers how you normally would, you can just import that directly from Forta agent as well. And you can call out to request different kinds of state from the blockchain as you need. Okay, so getting inside of this handle transaction function, right now the starter project limits the number of findings emitted by this bot to 5, and this is just to limit the amount of sort of starter project alerts generated. But you can feel free to comment this out for your project. You probably want to do that. But yeah, so before diving into the code, there's a README that is associated with each bot project. And it just sort of tells you what this bot does. So this bot detects transactions with large tether transfers. And it supports Ethereum. And this is just kind of a template for you to fill in and describe what your bot does and what sort of alerts it fires, and any sort of test data that someone could use to verify the bot's behavior. And this will be published with your bot when you deploy to the network so that everyone can see what your bot is about. Okay, so we want to filter for large tether transfers. So we can use a convenience function over here called filter log. And over here, you can specify which event ABIs you want to filter for, right? So I just have the event declaration for an ERC20 transfer. And I can also optionally specify which particular contract I want to filter for as well. So this is just a convenience function on the transaction event that you can use to easily filter out logs for one type of event or many types of events, as well as from one sort of source contract or various source contracts. So using this, I can extract from this transaction all of the tether transfers. And then now I have this array of tether transfers. And for each transfer event, I'm going to extract the event arguments, which are the to and the from and the value. And I'm just going to normalize the value to be not in sort of 18 decimal places. So I'm going to shift by tether's decimal points, which is 6. And I get the normalized value of tether. And I'm just making sure that that value is greater than 10,000. And so if I meet this condition, then I want to fire a finding. And I'm just going to add a finding object, which I've declared the fields for over here. But I'm just going to add this object to my findings array, which I've declared at the very top. And at the end of the function, I'm just returning that array of findings. So you can have 1 or 0 or many findings per transaction or per block. And the finding itself has some standard fields like name, description, severity. This will depend on your particular use case as to what is a high severity alert. But you also have this metadata field where you can populate other types of information that may be important to your use case. So yeah, that's essentially the source code in a nutshell. So now I want to run this. So I want to run this bot, and I can easily do that with the CLI with the start command. So I'm just going to say npm start, and by default, this will run the Forta agent run command for me. So I'm just going to start that up. And it's going to build my TypeScript code first. And this will start fetching data by default from Ethereum. So the CLI by default points to Cloudflare's Ethereum RPC endpoint, and you can configure that to whatever you want using your Forta config file. So right now, this printed out a couple of findings for me for different transactions. And this will keep running on live data if I let it. But also, if I want to look at historical data, I can say, npm run transaction, and then pass in a transaction hash. And similarly, I can also say npm run block and pass in a particular block or a set of blocks that would trigger the condition in my bot. There's a bunch of other commands, but if I've tested this and I'm ready to publish, all I have to say is npm run publish, and this will containerize my bot and deploy it to the Forta network and register it in the smart contracts registry. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'll stop.